Been an incredible ride. I've met so many interesting people, and the Isle of Man's been so good to us.
Welcome to Island Influencers, where we share stories of successful business owners, experienced professionals, entrepreneurs and community leaders based or with influence in the Isle of Man. This podcast is brought to you by Thornton Chartered Financial Planners, because great financial planning has the power to change your life. Now here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner Sharon Sutton.
Welcome to Island Influencers. This week, I'm talking to Basil Bielich, who's South African-born Guinness World Record holder. Basil joins me this week to share his fascinating life story and admits he went to school to play sports and confesses academics were not a focus. Rugby, football and cricket definitely were, though. Having to join the National Service post-school, his journey took him away from the Navy to the Marines to become an officer. Then, after knuckling down at university and getting a degree, he became an accountant. Basil explains how an introduction via his future father-in-law created career connections on the Isle of Man, leading to a holiday here. Basil felt a special connection to the island, coupled with being a massive Liverpool supporter, and so he made a silent pact to return as soon as he could. Basil and his young family arrived in 1997 and are an Isle of Man asset to keep hold of. In this episode, Basil, a man of many hats, shares his vision for his recently merged business, the Atla Group, and explains how he's swapped his rugby boots and cricket bat for golf clubs. He's incredibly active in the Isle of Man community, serving as president of the Isle of Man Commonwealth Games Association and is chair of the Manx Solidarity Fund, to highlight just a couple. Here's this week's conversation with Basil Bielich in episode 63 of Island Influencers. Welcome, Basil Bielich, to this week's Island Influencers. Thanks so much, Basil, for coming all the way out to St John's Mill. I know how busy you are. I mean, with all the hats that you wear, it's so nice of you to come out. So,
well, Sharon, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Without further ado, what we normally do is we go back in time and just, why don't you tell us where you're from and your background, because that's clearly not an accent from the Isle of Man. I'm observant like that.
Okay. I grew up in Pretoria in South Africa. I grew up in a very close family, an elder brother and a sister. Grew up in a very happy family. I went to school in Pretoria. I went to 2 boys-only schools. My academics was never my main aim.
But you've got lots of sporting interests, though. Hey, we'll get to that.
I went to school to play sport. I used to get to school really early in the morning and leave as late as possible, just playing sport. My academics were sort of an add-on to my sporting career.
So which sports?
I used to play everything. I played football, I played cricket, I played rugby. I played it sort of in most of the first teams.
Yeah.
I played local school, provincial sport and went through school playing sport. My academics, I always coped well and I passed all my subjects and I did well at maths. After school, we all did national service. My father was in the army.
Right, okay, so you had to do national service back.
Yep.
Do you still, or is it?
No, it ended at the end of apartheid, national service.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what was that like?
National service to me was like the worst 2 years of my life.
Really? I would think they'd do loads and loads of sport. And No? Okay.
I started my national service in the Navy. I did my basic training. Then I went to the financial corps in Simonstown.
They had a financial corps?
Yeah. And I went there to play rugby. So
okay.
I was part of the Defence Force rugby team. I used to train in the evenings. And our corps won the Navy rugby championships. And unfortunately, I got spotted there and I got sent to the Marines. And I had to do marine training there and ended up on the border, South African border, for a while. Eventually, I decided I went to become an officer, so I got put on officers training course.
Okay.
And I joined the finance corps there, and at the end of my 2 years, I left as an officer, which was
that's cool.
Interesting. Yeah. So that was my army training.
Yeah. And what happened then?
Then I went to university. So I went to Stellenbosch University in the Cape, which was fantastic. And once again, all I did was play sport. But by this time, you needed to pass a few academic exams. So for the first 2 years, I played cricket and rugby. I represented Stellenbosch at cricket. I captained their cricket team.
Wow.
And I played a lot of rugby during the winter. At the end of my second year, I got asked to go to a meeting with Darnie Craven. Now, Darnie Craven at that stage was head of the International Rugby Union.
Right, okay.
And he called me in and said he can't keep me at the university unless I started passing some exams.
Shucks.
And I was studying accountancy at that stage, and so for the next 3 years I passed all my exams and I got my degree at the end of that.
Well done.
Then I went to look for articles or training to become an accountant. I got a job at Ernst & Young and I did my articles at Ernst & Young.
That's not too bad. One of the big four.
In Johannesburg,
Yeah.
which was good. And that to me was one of the most exciting times of my life. I found doing my article training, every major company needs an audit. And when the auditors come in, they've got the ability to speak to anybody in the company. And I found myself on audits of large life companies, listed companies on the stock exchange. And you had the ability to go and knock on the MD's door and go and ask interesting questions.
And did you?
I did. And that to me was the most interesting part of...
What was the most audacious you were when you went to ask?
I remember I started my auditing career when Investec Bank started.
Oh, okay.
And I was on the Investec audit and I had to find out about some issues in the bank. And I knocked on Brian Cantor's door and I walked in and I asked him a few questions and about their expenses. And he gave me a long answer. After that, he started asking my questions about me and what my career path was going to be.
Okay.
I sat there speaking to him for about 2 hours, which I found really interesting. I could ask him questions about the bank and whatever. And then at the end of the day, everybody knows Investec now. It's this huge worldwide bank
sure
around.
Is.
And
yeah.
the other thing was, working with entrepreneurs who were starting their businesses,
Okay.
and actually finding out about them. And that's really what I find the most interesting part about the work we do.
Yeah.
At the end of my articles, I went to a software, an IT company.
Yeah, it was at Unisys. I saw
Unisys,
that on your. I was stalking you on LinkedIn.
Okay. Yeah, Unisys is in South Africa, because of the sanctions, they were under the banner of Unidata and Datacore.
Right.
And it was I spent, I think, 4 years there.
Uh-huh.
Working for an entrepreneur, a guy called Nick Frangos. He was, at that stage, he was president of the Young Presidents Society, which is I think it's a US organization that was young presidents of companies, billion-dollar companies, that were under 40 years old. I find him an inspiration of a person to deal with. I think one of the biggest things that I had with Nick, or encounters that I had I was a management accountant at Unisys, and I got put on a sales course.
Oh.
With all the salesmen. And I went into that. And the first day, in normal courses, in the first hour, you introduce yourself and you go around the room. I got up and I said, "Hi, I'm Basil, and I'm an accountant, and I don't know why I'm on a sales course, because I've never sold anything in my life." And he said to me, "You're selling yourself at the moment, and you're always selling yourself." So, and he gave me a lot of sort of inspiration that you always just be who you are and just sell yourself.
Okay, well, that's good advice, clearly.
Yeah. So, at that stage, I learned how the management side behind of an entity. And although as auditors you go into companies and you see the top level stuff, actually being in the company and learning about the numbers, what drive companies, and learning how to set strategies is really an important part of any business, which gave me a lot of experience. After Unisys, I worked for a property company, which was sort of a short 2 year stint.
Yeah.
And then the opportunity to come to the Isle of Man came on.
Yeah, at which point you were a chartered accountant too, weren't you?
Yeah, I qualified then. So
how on earth did that come? You don't just... how did you get to come to the Isle of Man?
I think it's quite a long story. In about 1986, David Crane, Cliff Walters, and Keith Karouche went out to South Africa on, talking to people, must have been one of the very first road trips ever made.
Must have been.
And they went out to South Africa to promote the Isle of Man.
Right.
And they met my father-in-law. Then my father-in-law was a importer-exporter in South Africa.
Right.
And the Isle of Man new financial centre fitted into his business.
Yeah, it did.
model.
It just really started. 86 was when I left school, actually, yeah.
Yeah. So he came over to the Isle of Man in, I think, at the end of 86, fell in love with the island. He met somebody who knew his sister, who was partially blind, and we came over with my father-in-law's sister to the island in 91.
Right. On holiday, really?
On holiday for 2 weeks.
Must have been quite different, really, to being in South Africa.
It was fantastic. I remember going on I used to run marathons at that stage of my life, and I went on a training run. We were staying in Glen Alden, and I went from Glen Alden and I turned left and headed towards Kirkmichael.
Yeah.
And I remember clearly the feeling then. You know, when you get a feeling that this place means something special. On that run, I still remember the feeling that I had. It was incredible at that stage. So I went to visit David Crane at the office, and I said, look, I'm quite keen in working outside of South Africa to get international experience. I think my main drive was I knew Liverpool was just across the water, and I'm a mad Liverpool supporter.
Oh, okay, me too.
Yeah,
not mad, but
yeah. So I thought I could come here for 2 years, at least go to one game at Anfield. Unfortunately, at that stage, David said I hadn't finished all my exams at that stage. So he said, go back to South Africa and come back to the island when you qualified. And David organised for the examiner to be sent out to me. And so for 5 years, I used to receive...
Really?
I used to receive the examiner.
Vacancies.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons. But it used to come by boat, so I used to get a pack of about 3 or 4 every once a month. And I used to read the examiner. And then in early 97... Yeah. A friend of my father-in-law's owned a life company on the Isle of Man. It was Claremont Life. I came over. The owner of the business felt he needed an accountant in the business. Yeah. And I came over and met Vernon Bull, who was the MD of the company. Mm-hmm. And he and I worked out that all they needed was a bookkeeper and they didn't need an accountant.
Oh, what?
And it wasn't something that I wanted. So I'd made a trip over to the island for that job. So once again, I went to Brown Crane and I visited David. And they worked out that they had a position. And he offered me a position on the Isle of Man. So Penny and I and my 2 kids moved over in May 97.
Golly. So how old would Tom and Katie have been back then?
They were 2 and 4. Yeah. And so we moved over thinking we'll give it a go and see how things go. Right. And it's gone very well. Yeah. After a year, I joined David and Morris in the partnership, and it's gone well since then. It's been an incredible ride. I've met so many interesting people, and the Isle of Man's been so good to us. Yeah, no, I'm sure. So when you got settled, I mean, what made it feel like home? What sort of things outside of office did you? I think the community here on the Isle of Man. We landed in Mackhold. Yeah. And our kids went to the Doon School, and there's an incredible community spirit in the Isle of Man. Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it, how you become friends with the parents of all your kids. and we just seemed to fit in. And, there was so much going on, so much support. But any place you go to, in any environment, it's what you put into it. Sure. And there was so much to do. Our kids were at that stage where they were starting to go to swimming, to do all the sports on the weekends. Yeah. So what about Dad's sports? What did you manage to carry on doing? No rugby at this point? No, I'd given up rugby and cricket. What a shame. Yeah. When I came to the Isle of Man, I'd spent so much time during my working career in South Africa playing sort of top-level sport on the weekends.
Yeah.
And I decided that if I was going to put in family time, I couldn't carry on playing sports. So I resisted joining a cricket club, and I resisted getting involved in rugby on the island. So I devoted time to the kids, and I started playing a lot of golf with friends here on the island.
Sure.
And that has led to a number of experiences.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about the when they just took up swimming? They didn't just take it up as club level, did they? They kind of went all the way.
In South Africa, when you have children, you waterproof them as early as possible. So our kids, I think, had their first lesson at about 6 months.
Right.
They learn how to, if they fall in water, to turn on their back to get to the side and then walk along the wall to the side. So by the time we got here to the Isle of Man, they both could swim all 4 strokes at 4 years old.
Goodness.
And I remember my daughter going to one of the Ramsey sessions, and my wife saying to the teacher, they can both swim, and they said, no, they can't. And they went in the baby pool, and my wife said, my daughter can do all 4 strokes, and they watched her, and she could do all 4 strokes. So she got involved. My son then could also swim, and their swimming careers both took off.
They didn't they? Did they both do Commonwealth? I think they did.
No, my daughter didn't. My son did Commonwealth in Glasgow.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Great. So when you got into the community, then I noticed you've done quite a few bits of volunteering, and you still do. So you're still on the hook for the Rotary Treasury by the looks of it. That's a long-standing gig, isn't it?
Yeah. I think as an accountant, and every charity needs an accountant or somebody to do their books. I got involved in Round Table on the Isle of Man as a way of meeting people.
Sure.
And there were... I think Round Table at that stage was really strong in the younger business community. Yeah. And I met a lot of people there and made a lot of contacts through Round Table.
Is it still men only, or they let girls in now?
I think Round Table on the Isle of Man has basically shrunk away. I think there could be one.
She'll let the girls in, you see.
Yeah. Then from Round Table, I went into Rotary, and Rotary now allows, there's no barriers to anybody joining.
No, okay, there you go.
Yeah, which is good.
Yes, right.
Yeah, so I joined Rotary, and I'm still treasurer on that.
Yeah. And you're a Commonwealth Games Association president.
Gosh, that started, I think, from my swimming days. Yeah. Where I got asked, I was sitting on the side of the pool, I got asked to just come and help with the timekeeping, and that timekeeping grew into, slowly got pulled into the treasurer's role. And then from treasurer, I did chairman's role. And then about 2015, I got asked to join the Commonwealth Games Association. At that stage, Juliet Holt was president, and then she retired, and they asked me to take that over.
Yeah, congratulations, That's 4 years now.
Yeah.
Birmingham next year.
Yeah, and it's building up to that. But the Gold Coast was the most incredible experience.
I bet it was, yeah.
I was quite a novice at that stage, but I felt like, as a sports lover, I felt like I'd won the golden ticket to sports events, and just being able to go to every event and watch our athletes perform is just incredible. Yeah.
Must be quite exciting to be thinking about Birmingham and what could potentially happen, especially our cycling squad.
I think there's so much excitement going on. I think hopefully we can have Cav at the games, because I think then we'll be a force and be able to put a really strong team.
Is it a flat circuit then?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay. Birmingham it should be, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
Although you never know. You think Belgium was flat, and then you watch the Worlds on
Sunday. Yeah. And then, but I think it's been really hard for most of the athletes. COVID has made it very difficult for our athletes, especially those based on the island, to be able to qualify for the games. Yeah. And we've got qualifying standards, but I think that's going to have to be adapted and to be able to take our top athletes to the games.
So I went to Manchester, I don't know if you know, but it was, I certainly remember the financial pressures not being as great as, to say, going to somewhere like Gold Coast. So that's why we had such a bigger squad in Manchester.
Yeah.
So maybe the Birmingham squad can be similar, although the accommodating costs, you'll know all the figures, because I'm sure you're well involved in those.
From our side, as a Commonwealth Games Association, the costs for the different games are very similar no matter where they are in the world, because the host country often, they cover the travel costs of getting to the games.
Right.
And the accommodation costs. So from our point of view, we have to pay for the kit, for the training, for various expenses outside of what the host country covers.
Yeah, and I remember back in the day, we all, as a sport, we all had to do our own fundraising because there's only a certain amount of government support. So is that still the case? Yeah,
the government does support us, which is quite good at the moment.
Yeah, sure.
I think, we've gone through phases. Well, since I've joined, we're becoming closer to Isle of Man sport and working out a way of working together to take a team to the games. The island is so small. To me, we need to all work together on the same page and get a really good team to the games. And I think we've put in processes now, working closely with Isle of Man Sport to do that.
That's great news. Yeah, well said. I know that last year during the pandemic, I think so many of us were thankful and amazed how quickly the Manx Solidarity Fund got put together, and I know you've been instrumental in that.
I think it started in March 2020 when the pandemic started. I think there was a group of businessmen, and I think you've had Paul Hotchkiss on here before talking about
that's
it.
Right, yeah.
So he and a few others were instrumental in getting the Solidarity Fund, or the concept of it, going. And I got approached as working for a corporate service provider that we had the ability to get something done quickly. And it was amazing how quickly and how everybody pulled together. I think we had a charity formed within a week.
It was phenomenal how quickly it got going.
Yeah, but that was with cooperation of the Attorney General, with the banks, with the lawyers. John Rimmer drew up our trust deed so quickly, and it just happened, and we just made the thing happen. And we had our first meeting, I think, on the 27th of March, about a week after we decided to do it. And I remember hosting, we'd never met in person, and most of the people hadn't met each other. The first meeting, I got asked to be chairman of the charity, and it was incredible how we got things going, how we raised money so quickly, and how the community just pulled together to get that. I think it's been documented quite a few times on how well that has been, and challenging, and to be able to get a charity that worked, where individuals that hadn't worked together, that were giving up their time voluntarily to do things, it was quite amazing.
Indeed it was.
I think Christian Barley's efforts on the 19 marathons, that boosted our profile incredibly, and we raised nearly 750,000.
It's unbelievable.
So quickly, because of that.
He did a monumental effort, didn't he?
Yeah, no, that was good. And then we had the Lieutenant Governor on, and he used to come on and help us and open doors for us as well, which was incredible.
Yes, we'll miss him. Let's hope his replacement is up to muster.
I'm looking forward to meeting him.
He's got to set a high bar. Okay, so Brown Crane is the accountancy practice, and then there's Peregrine that's a corporate service provider alongside that. And I noticed that the two, I looked up, I've obviously been stalking you on both your websites just to see that, similar profiles but not the same. And I know that recently you acquired, or you've merged with Harding Lewis Accountants, and also recently Fidelta Pensions. So it's It's going to be quite a different experience to try and map your way around if you're looking for something. You've got any plans to look at that?
Basically, we had the Brown Crane, who was the local chartered accountants firm, and I've mentioned before, we started Peregrine Corporate Services, which was named after Peregrine House.
Yes, where you live. Not really.
In 1986. And we've bought or managed to merge with Harding Lewis, and now Fidelta Pensions have come in. It's been a hectic year. I think we first spoke to Harding Lewis at the end of November in last year. And this year we brought the two companies together. We're in similar markets, doing similar things.
It's a good fit.
It's a very good fit. We've got the same sort of ethos, the same culture within the two businesses. It's been really good to merge the two companies. Getting the two businesses, and with the offshore company, Peregrine concentrates in the offshore market.
Yeah.
We'd been looking to get into the pension space and do pension administration from on the island, and the opportunity came for Fidelta to join us. So that's been really good, and it's diversified our portfolio quite a bit. I think with the offshore market changing, it's good to have a bit of diversity. To bring all four companies together has been quite a challenge, and we've been going through the process of how we give people an identity within the firm, because I think now that our company's grown to over 80 people, we need to give our staff an identity, and we have just rebranded our company into the Atla Group. Atla, yeah. So Atla comes from a Viking goddess of the sea.
Sounds very fitting.
Yeah. We went through a number of different scenarios which would fit something simple that would give us an identity. So it's simple, and everybody will have 4 different companies underneath there.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, you should send me the details, and we'll put that in the show notes so that we can link alongside that. Yeah. That's really helpful. Yeah. No, thank you. So I remember a few years back now, I think it was, you did a most amazing thing, a World Golf Challenge. For the benefit of our listeners, would you mind, and me, would you mind explaining what happened?
A friend of mine and I ran the New York Marathon. I think we finished in over 4 hours, both of us.
That's good.
Yeah, not an Ollie Lockley or one of those, but we were sitting in a pub, Rosie O'Grady's in New York. We were discussing that Randolph Fiennes, who had just finished his 7th marathon in 7 days in 7 continents. And after a few Guinness, we realized that the closest we'd come to doing that, we would be playing 7 golf courses in 7 continents in 7 days.
Okay. So how did you do that?
And then about a month later, my friend Brian Kelly phoned me up and said we could do this.
He's a travel agent, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a helpful.
And I said, do what? He said, that challenge, the 7 continents. He said he'd spend some time looking at it and we could do it. So we phoned up Guinness Book of Records to find out if anybody else had done it. And nobody had done it. But they said to us, you can only play on registered PGA courses for us to be able to recognize it as a world record. And unfortunately, in the Antarctic, there are no PGA golf courses.
Wonder why?
The closest that comes is on the Falkland Islands. There's a 9-hole golf course on the Falkland Islands, but they wouldn't recognize that, which actually worked to our advantage because it made it easier for us to travel. So we set a world record. 4 of us went around the world on commercial airlines, playing 6 rounds of golf on 6 continents in 6 days.
Goodness me. So which ones were they?
We played in Egypt, then we played in Singapore and Sentosa Island, and then we played the Royal New South Wales in Sydney.
Yep.
We played in Santiago in Chile. We played in Miami at the Doral course in Miami.
Yeah.
And then we flew back to London and then to the Isle of Man, and we played our last round in Castletown.
Oh,
which was fantastic. The Isle of Man government helped us to go on this on the trip, and so to promote the island, we did it. The last round.
My goodness.
And we had a TV crew that went around with us.
Gosh, is there any footage of it these days on YouTube and that? Or?
I think that, I don't know on YouTube. I know there is footage and it did appear on Sky.
Right.
So
if there's anything, we'll feature that in our notes. But that's amazing. Did you raise funds for charity?
Yeah, we actually raised money for the Commonwealth Games, which was quite ironic.
It sure was, yeah.
Because at that stage I wasn't even involved in it.
Yeah, that is perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a great story.
I think that's what the Isle of Man is about. It creates so many opportunities for people to do things like that.
My husband, he's a bit of a golfer. He reckons that the best golf course isn't actually in use anymore. It was the one at Glentrammon, is it?
Glentroon.
Glentroon.
Yeah.
He reckons that has got such the makings of an amazing golf course, and unfortunately it's fallen into disarray or something.
I think with the right funding, that it would have been an amazing golf course.
Yeah, proper Ryder Cup destination. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there we are. Future opportunities, maybe.
Exactly.
But if you don't mind me asking, and I always ask this to guests, and I've had some amazing answers, some interesting answers, but in my day job as a financial planner, I always ask people, when I first meet them, what was your earliest memory of money? How was money growing up, for example?
My father was in the Defence Force, so I never wanted for anything. We were never, extremely wealthy, but as children, we never wanted for anything. Mm-hmm. My grandparents, from my surname, came out to South Africa from Croatia. And I grew up in an environment where you had people who had uprooted themselves to another country. My grandfather went out when the mining boom in South Africa had happened just after the First World War. People that came out there were entrepreneurs. So when we used to go for Sunday lunches to my grandparents, there would always be other immigrants there, and they all had come to South Africa starting their own businesses and helping each other. And that sort of raised my awareness of money and what it meant to create. They were basically trying to create a new start for their families. So I became aware of the importance of looking after money then. I also, I think that would raise my entrepreneurial spirit, is seeing people like that.
Conversations around the meal table, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think that was important to growing up. Yeah. I think I before I came for this interview, I thought, when was the first time that I made my first bit of money? And I remember the feeling that I had when at our school we used to do parking. Loftus Versfeld was next door to our school. So whenever there was a big rugby match or a big sporting match, we used to do parking on the school grounds. And as students, we used to go and let the cars in. The one evening, there was a world heavyweight champion boxing match where Big John Tate was fighting against Kerry Coetzee. One of the people attending the match walked past me and gave me a ticket. He said, "Why don't you go in?" And about 10 minutes later, somebody came past me and said, "You guys haven't got any spare tickets." It was my first time as a ticket out, but
first and only.
I said to him, "Oh, you can have this ticket." And he said, the face value was 100 Rand or whatever it is. And he gave me the money. And that was the first time I thought that if you had something and you sold it, you earned money. And I spent the rest of the night selling tickets and buying and selling tickets. And I went in and I actually saw the
goodness me. Yeah.
I don't know if you're allowed to put this in.
Well, that's good. You painted a really good picture there of sitting around the meal table.
Yeah.
I had in my mind the conversations that were going on, and you just imagine all these business owners and going, "Oh, well, this happened to me, and this happened to me." Yeah, amazing. So, of all the things that you've done throughout your life so far, what's given you the most fulfillment?
I think it's contributing to the Isle of Man community. I think that's given through various things that I've done, sort of volunteer positions. I thoroughly enjoyed everything, meeting people, but I think seeing the expressions on children's faces getting out the swimming pool, at the end of a race, just that smile just gives you incredible fulfillment. On the Isle of Man, the amount of volunteering that goes on and the amount of time people give to others, be it in sport, be it in culture or in anything.
Yeah.
Contributes to the wonderful community that we do have, which is important. And I think for me, being able to give up some time as payback to the community. Because I've had incredible opportunities from the Isle of Man. So I think that is...
You sure have.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Basil. I mean, but for those who don't know how to get involved, perhaps with volunteering, I don't know, that there might be something coming up with Commonwealth Games. Is there anything that people can do? Any fundraisers that you're doing for?
I think we are raising money. The Queen's Baton will be coming to the island in June. We'll be holding a dinner event where we'll introduce the team at the same time as a Queen's Baton relay.
Right.
But I think, any parent who's got a child, and just go and help the volunteers, even if it's making tea for the timekeepers at an event or anything, just get involved.
Yeah, that's a good message.
Everybody can contribute, and the more that do it, it makes it easier for the others.
Better to give than to get, yeah. Okay, so you'll have a number of these, I'm sure, but for any existing or aspiring business owner, entrepreneur, what would be your number one tip? Just believe in yourself. No matter how many doubts, everybody's got doubts about themselves. Just give it a go. Everybody knows the famous sayings that Dyson and Edison and all those. They never got it right first time, and just keep on trying and keep on and never give up. And if things are bad, just remember at the end of the day, the sun will always come up tomorrow morning. It does indeed. So what do you do to relax now and keep your life in balance? So is it finding a balance for me is quite difficult. I enjoy spending time with my family. I've managed to secure season tickets at Anfield. So I go to as many games as I possibly can. I play a lot of golf, and especially in the last 2 years when we couldn't leave the island, I've been playing a lot more. So what's your handicap now? Still as bad as ever. No, surely not even on the new system. Yeah, on the new system, I think I'm a 14 on the new system. So, okay. Yeah, so I'm not in your husband's class, but no. I don't know many people are, but... Yeah. Tell me, what do you think are the best things about living in the Isle of Man? I think there's so much. I think, to me, it's just the community spirit. From a South African point of view, or having a South African background, the safety aspect, the fact that you don't have to worry about going for a walk on your own, or if your wife's going for a walk on her own, that is priceless for a lot of people. And the contentment that you can have just living here. Yeah. I've travelled... I spent a lot of time travelling, and just landing back at Ronaldsway and thinking, I'm back home. Yeah. It's good. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah. That's really nice. But what would you say our main challenges are? I mean, there's all sorts of, in our field, financial services and, what have you, there's so many legislative changes coming. And I think the Isle of Man is going to be challenged by changes in legislation around the world. But any change creates an opportunity. It's how you adapt to that. And as long as we know what the playing field that we're playing on, and you adapt to that, I think that the Isle of Man government has been shown foresight by diversifying our economy, and hopefully they'll continue doing that and create and find new opportunities. And I think there's a willingness to do that. As we find new opportunities, and how we embrace those is important. So I don't see tax changes or as a major hindrance. I think you've got to just learn how to adapt and find opportunities. Yeah, indeed. So what have you got planned next, Basil? What's next for you, Brown Crane, Peregrine, Atla? Yeah, I think the new Atla group, we hopefully can consolidate all the new companies, bring everybody, give our staff an identity in the next few years, and then basically consolidate our business and move forward on that. It looks like a company that's already got a great culture. I mean, do you plan to do any changes there, or just keep it as great as it is? I think from a business point of view, we are creating opportunities for all our staff to grow. I think we're moving away from the traditional partnership professional service type company where you've got a number of partners at the top owning the company. We're going to try and move away to a model where everybody in the company shares in how the business is moving. Okay, a bit like is that like a B Corp or something like that? Yeah, I think it won't go as far as the John Lewis type model. No, but an employee ownership trust. Okay. Yeah, that sounds really, really interesting.
And it's created an environment where people enjoy coming to work and they know they've got the opportunities.
The last few fun questions you'll be thrilled to know. Any books you've recently read that you would want to recommend to readers? It doesn't... To listeners, rather.
I think I spend a lot of time. I think I'm a shelf stacker and not a reader.
Apparently, it's self-development, not shelf development.
Yeah, I think I'm in the second. My Kindle's full of books, business books. The one or the two that I have managed to get through, which has been very good, is The Extreme Ownership and the Dichotomy of Leadership by Jacko Willink. He's an ex-Navy SEAL.
Okay.
Was recommended to me by a friend of mine. Those are the two that I've recently read, but I enjoy listening to podcasts and finding out about people.
I think you're my number one fan.
Yeah, I've listened to them all, from the Tim Ferrisses to Tony Robbins's. I think the High Performance podcast now is one of the ones I've been listening to quite a bit.
Yeah,
and then the Sportscast, Don't Tell Me the Score podcast, so that was on BBC. I think he's moved it on to, he's got a new name for it. But
right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Super. What's your favourite quote?
It's by Henry Ford. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're always right.
Good quote. It's a good quote.
Yeah, and so if you believe in yourself, you'll be able to do it, and you can you can do anything you want to, just find a way. Yeah.
Brilliant. So where can people go to learn more about you and the organisations and, of course, the company that you represent?
I think about our company, it'll be at atla.com or atla.im.
And then the Commonwealth Games got a website, I presume.
Yeah, the Commonwealth Games Association's got a website, and there's Rotary as well.
Yeah,
it's also got its
own
own
we'll put those in the show notes.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's about it, really. But thank you so much for spending the time today. It's been wonderful to hear your story and all about you, and some valuable insights there for the benefit of all our listeners. Thank you, Basil.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Island Influencers from Thornton Chartered Financial Planners. To find out more and for useful links, visit thorntonfs.com/podcasts.